Welcome to Something to Talk About from the Bainbridge Island Senior Community Center. I'm Reed Price. I'm the director of the center. And today we're going to be talking about a BI Reads book. Oh, I better get rid of my background here so you can actually see what I'm pointing to. It's called This Is Chance, The Great Alaska Earthquake, Jeannie Chance, and the Shattered City That She Held Together. And it is, here, you can see it now. It is the BI Reads book, and we have been reading it, and I hope you have been reading it, and will join us with some comments and conversation. I want to, before we get started, thank Fieldstone Communities of Bainbridge Island for being a sponsor of Something to Talk About. Fieldstone offers independent living, assisted living, and memory care up on Rolling Bay. They have day stay and respite care programs as well, and they'd love to give you a tour. They're actually having a little fundraiser for BI Prepare for Bainbridge Prepares later this month. I don't know whether you can still register for it, but I imagine if you give them a call and ask, we'd love to have you come and join us out there on July 31st for a little party in support of Bainbridge Prepares. Their number 206-594-1010. Ask for Randy or Jamie, and their website is fieldstonecommunities.com. John Fawcett and Ann Lovejoy, I think, are going to be helping us get started, and I'm going to turn off my computer over here and go join them in the other room to talk about Chance. This is Chance.
Thank you, Reed. Yeah, I'm so happy to be here today with John Fawcett from the library. We've done quite a few programs together over the years, and Scott James, the founder of Bainbridge Prepares. And Cook, also of Bainbridge Prepares, Bill Luria, who had lived in Anchorage around that time too. And we thought that we would have a little conversation about how the book affected us, what we thought about it, what people did that they probably shouldn't have, and things like that. I wanted to ask you to kick it off because you said a really great thing earlier that you noticed something.
Oh, when I have two books. I read This Is Chance, but I also read stories from the '64 Alaska earthquake. And what really struck me was everybody ran outside, which is exactly what we don't want you to do. And there were also numerous references to being unable to walk, which is the whole point of drop, cover, hold on. Somehow they survived anyway, but most of them didn't have a clue as to what they were doing, and we're very lucky.
Well, earthquake preparedness is a lot more sophisticated now than it was then, for sure.
It is, for sure. Even just the telecommunications. So right when we were reading the book, and you just have to remind yourself of a few pages, this is so far before cell phones and general telecommunications ease that we have. It was like, oh, that's right. We did have society before cell phones and we were able to communicate, but the stories were fascinating
because without the kind of connectivity we rely on every day, they really were winging it, right? Quite a bit.
Yeah.
Well, and I wonder how much, we might find ourselves, at least for a while, without some of those connections in the event of a disaster.
We will, for sure. It's part of why we built the backbone on ham radio. We can have other things like direct satellite connections, and now the newer iPhones and the newer Android phones can go directly to satellite in a true emergency. But we still have that layer of ham radio, which was in fact mentioned several times in the book in terms of that's how Alaska was really communicating on down the coastline to the rest of the country.
So is there a training program for ham radio people who want to get involved?
Why, yes, thank you for asking that.
Who knew?
Yeah, our Bears team is very happy right now. So we have a team called Bears, Bainbridge Emergency Amateur Radio Service. We're lucky enough that our town has its own radio club, right? So we have the Bainbridge Amateur Radio Club, which is a phenomenal group of people. It is always growing as well. And so early on in Bainbridge Prepares history, we just approached the club and said, could we outsource all communication to you all? And they said yes.
Oh, nice.
Yes. So they run classes on a regular basis. And the classes are really help you, one, understand what ham radio is, and then two, drive towards getting your license, taking a test and getting a license, because it's a type of radio, you do need a license to operate. If I can do the test and pass it, anybody can.
Oh, Scott. But I'm curious, like my grandson's really interested. He's like
Yeah.
12. Is there a space for kids to do an apprenticeship or something like that?
Yes, I don't know if there
They
is,
can get their license.
yeah, is there a,
Really?
is there a minimum age? Is it 12?
I don't think there is if you can pass the test.
Yeah, I don't recall ever reading a minimum age, so you could probably have a 12-year-old ham radio operator.
Oh, there's a bunch of kids who are pretty darn competent, especially with gadgets, right?
Yeah,
So a whole generation might be much better at this than we were.
yes.
Because like you said, when in Alaska at that time, there really wasn't a whole lot of even ham radios, right?
Right. Well, what Chance was doing, I mean, her one-to-many broadcasts, that was their version of social media.
That's what
Right.
I was thinking.
Yeah, and you could see people coming in with their posts that she would read.
Yeah.
So she was basically the voice of, messages out to, how's everything, like Facebook's little I'm safe message. She was the I'm safe message.
Yeah.
She'd say these people were in. One of the things that struck me though was although there was some planning for disaster,
Mhm.
when disaster struck, that basically didn't work. And everybody ad hoc created new systems.
Yeah.
Is that what we can expect in the event of a disaster down here?
Yes and no. The yes is yes. We have an incredibly vibrant group of volunteers. They're all super smart on their teams. We have teams that range from everywhere from animal care to ham radio to disaster hubs. We have all
To
the
food.
things to food. Through the team lead right here.
Right?
With deep expertise, right? So if there's anything that I'm struggling with in my permaculture gardens, I will ask John and Carol, and because they are the deepest food geeks around. And we have that for all of the different teams. So the answer to your question is yes, we would be able to do ad hoc things because we have these subject matter experts. But then the answer is also no, we don't have to do that because we've done a lot of forward planning. And that's really where the partnership with the city, with Ann Lesage, and with the fire department, with Chief
Yeah.
Jared and Deputy Chief Jeremy comes into play, where a lot of that what if scenarios has been done.
And maybe more thoroughly than the poor little emergency response team that sat in the corner and watched everybody else respond.
Yeah, that was way up in Alaska. Yeah, yeah.
So you said that you were there the year after.
Right, and I moved there at 1965, March, April.
So
timeframe.
you could still tell that there was a lot of,
Oh, absolutely. Turnagain Arm looked like somebody had dropped a cake. There was everything in all directions. Now they call it Earthquake Park and you just see sort of this vacant area and you go, so what? But the apartment building I lived in was on L Street. And it was an L-shaped apartment. And the end that I lived in for a while was fine. The other end was a whole rubble pit. It just didn't even, there was nothing there. And a
but they let you
couple,
move in anyway.
it didn't fall down. Yeah, I think they wanted money. I also at one point lived in the old Providence Hospital.
Oh,
when I
yeah.
was desperate for housing. And, it was an interesting time. I worked in Pennies. and,
Mhm.
The reconstructed pennies, I mean, they had to
Yeah.
rebuild it, right?
Yeah. They had it up and running. It's the only job I ever got where all I had to do was take an arithmetic test. I was just doing inventory.
What
The
am-
woman I worked with.
What amazed me is I was up there about 15 years later,
Yeah.
and the amount of recovery was staggering. I mean, I lived 2 blocks away from Earthquake Park,
Mhm.
and all there was monuments, and description that you looked at the neighborhood, that Turnigan was one of the most severely impacted. You couldn't tell that neighborhood. So after 15, 16, 17 years, the amount of recovery was staggering. It's really pretty impressive.
People died in Turnagain. One of the doctors working at Providence Hospital
Okay.
lost 2 kids when the earth opened up and closed again. So
Yeah.
at the time, it was very dramatic, but yeah, now it looks like a vacant lot. So what?
So there wasn't really, it didn't sound to me like they had anything like what we have in terms of NOAA telling us what's coming down the pike in terms of weather or like early seismic, what do you call those things?
The monitoring. system.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
monitoring system. There was anything? I don't even,
I think if there was, it was very rudimentary. And I mean, even just in the last so we started Bainbridge Repairs 15 years ago,
Yeah.
even just in that timeframe, the seismologist people at UW and the tsunami scientists at UW have improved the technology of stuff that they've got out on the ocean as well as in the Strait and then the Puget Sound. It has increased the technology has improved so much that now they can give us these drastically improved models for what's going to happen.
I've seen the newest one about where the water will come
Yeah,
theoretically.
the little animation thing that we have on the website. Yeah.
And you're like, oh, okay, then I better go up hill, right?
Exactly.
So as a hub, right down here, is this a good spot?
Yes, that was one of the very first things that Anna Sage and I looked at is the senior center okay? Because we had put a lot of energy into this campus as a disaster hub.
Right.
And the answer is yes. The water will come up some from Eagle Harbor for sure. But senior center is going to be okay as well as next door, the rowing center.
And if we're successful in an advanced, bigger center, the ground floor will be a perfect place, parking mainly,
Right.
to triage things, I'll bet.
Yes, yeah, for sure.
We're actually going to talk on Wednesday about resilience hubs and how this might be one. So if you're watching this, come back or watch it later on YouTube.
Yeah, for sure, because the resilience hub is a disaster hub writ large. It's like disaster hub is really, what do we do post earthquake? Resilience hub is week after week after week in good times and bad, how this becomes a center of resilience for the.
So what struck anybody that read this book about it? Anything particular that jumped out at you that surprised you?
I spent a lot of time in Alaska, beginning in 1985, and it was mostly working on boats up there. One of the things that all the old timers would tell me is anything under 10 fathom on the chart, be suspicious of it. Because there had been places, because the soundings were, some of it from 100 years ago. And then as they do a new sounding, they'll reprint the charts, put the information on there. But there's areas that just haven't had coverage for that sort of thing. And they'll notice the land's gone. It's changed. The other thing I noticed is I worked in Valdez for quite a while after the spill. And it's kind of sad that these periods in Alaska are always some disaster that's happened after the spill in 1989. And if I'm not mistaken, the town of Valdez was wiped out by the tidal wave and they actually relocated the town. But you could still see some detritus in there, up in the trees, a lot farther up from the shore than it should have been. And while I worked there, we had a couple of tsunami warnings. And, you'd get everything would have to get underway at that point because Valdez Harbor is huge. But yeah, all through southeast and all through central and southwest Alaska, you can still see some evidence.
You mentioned resilience. One of the things that, for those of us who've had the experience of Alaska, what made it work in a way in terms of recovery was the interpersonal relationships, that the individuals there had a common bond. And I wonder if that still exists today in this high technology. The thing that brought everyone together and the recovery made it so successful. What are the interpersonal relationships that existed? I don't know if it exists anymore here. I don't know if we would be able to
Does-
experience that.
This doesn't as much because I moved here in 85 and there was about 8,500 people. Now there's like 25,000 people. So it's not possible to have, but a lot of those people are still here. So there is, I would say, an underlying basic, pretty strong network of like old timers and people who've been here quite a while. But yeah, getting like rebuilding or really reweaving some of those community relationships is part of what we're trying to do here at the senior center for one thing. And you did at the library for many years and you're doing the Bainbridge Repairs. It's like, as community builders, we're doing everything we can think of to help people connect. And it's, you're right, Bill, absolutely, that the relationships are what carry the people in a disaster.
Yeah.
For sure.
We'll often tell folks that relationships are more important than gear. Because as North Americans, the first thing you do when you talk to them about preparing for an earthquake, a typical response is, well, tell me what I should buy. Tell me what I should go on Amazon and just click, 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 click. We don't want to encourage that consumerism. We're already terrible at it as a nation. We'd rather encourage the opposite, which is the interrelationships with the neighbors, particularly the direct neighbors, right? So if I am in the middle of the island and my best friend is way up north by Blodell, that's not very useful post-earthquake in the hours afterwards, because that's a very long distance when the roads are broken. I should spend that time also investing in my immediate neighbors, because life will get very local very quickly.
Well, aren't there various groups? I belong to one group in Rolling Bay, right?
Mhm.
With Andrea, she's not there.
Yeah.
She's not there anymore.
Yeah.
Does that exist all over the island now? Do you have neighborhood groups that come together?
Mhm. Do prepare-
50%,
Yeah.
50?
50.
50. So Anne was overseeing for many years, Map Your Neighborhood.
Yeah, she ran.
That's organized.
Yep.
And that's, talk a little bit about what Map Your Neighborhood is, which Bill is describing, I think.
Well, basically, the idea is, first of all, to get to know your neighbors and to do social events with them, as well as talk about the fundamental things you need to be prepared. Because Bainbridge is not going to be drivable from one end of the island to the other. One thing the book talks about is all the cracks in the road. And there was a cliff at the end of First Avenue. I mean, there was no way you could drive down there. So the important part first is to have relationships with your neighbors and cover the basics of food and water. And I'd say even 80% of the mapped neighborhoods don't have enough water yet, because you need a gallon of water per person per day. And
Plus for pets, right?
plus
Yeah.
pets and little children, anything that's alive.
And that's a minimum.
Yeah.
That's a minimum.
extreme
Yeah,
water.
the average household uses something like 110 gallons a day, because you've got washing machines, dishwashers, showers, and the people that brush their teeth by standing there and watching the water run down the faucet. I tell you guys, I hauled water by dog team from the town well house, as well as melting snow. And that is a precious commodity.
Yeah, it is. And you get that, you don't learn that, like I spent a year at 10,000 feet in the Rockies in an abandoned gold camp, right?
That
Cutting
was
10
cheap.
cords of wood by hand, and we built an igloo over the little stream to keep the water open, and then schlepped 5-gallon things up to the cabin, right? Melted snow. And it gave me the appreciation for water I've never lost. But I could no more let the water run. It's not, but
Oh,
it
yeah.
takes something like a lived experience to really help people change, I think, for the most part.
Oh, yeah.
Because otherwise it's intellectual, like, yeah, but you don't really get it. But when you start really paying attention, how much water am I using?
Yeah. And or wasting.
Well, yeah,
It's a lot.
absolutely.
Bill, back to your point, I think one of the things I took away from this book was Alaska during these decades, the only people who moved or could live in Alaska in those decades were tough people and multi-talented, right?
They had skill sets.
Yeah, they had skill sets. And I think that came out in a lot of the stories of, and where we've, as a society, we for sure lost that because we've gotten so specialized, but also just that general resilience of character was something that I think John Mood did a great job of bringing those stories out, the chance that she had captured back then.
I think that to me was the thing that I liked the book, rather than just a report on the earthquake. It was really about the individuals and the efforts that went on. Sometimes you read about earthquakes and stuff. It's the technical aspects of what happened, what recovered. But here it's all about in my mind, the people who were involved, and how they reacted. So that's what I took away.
And there were all, before the earthquake, they were all surviving on the frontier. Because when I got there in 85, the first time I got to Anchorage, I was looking around thinking, wow, this is still a frontier town. And, a lot of it hadn't changed still. There was a lot of just, it's different from down in the lower 48. And the attitudes were different. And it wasn't uncommon to go to your neighbor who had a backhoe and a skidder and all this stuff that you could borrow to do what you needed to borrow. But like you mentioned, they were kind of prepared for this, even with the own skill sets of the tough life of living on the edge at the beginning.
Yeah, although John does write about the fact that researchers went up from Ohio State to try to figure out,
right.
how do people react after a disaster? And the sense from the Anchorage Heights, Anchoragians,
Yeah.
was we are unique and so we were able to make connections. But mentioned in this book is that actually often after disasters, people respond in a compassionate and cooperative way.
Would you see that when, like after Houston, there were just lines and lines and lines of rescue people with boats and
And after COVID here, we just saw people come out of the woodwork where there used to be woods, now woodwork,
Yeah.
to help in any way they could.
I didn't get through much of it. Was there much? I don't think there was much looting, after disasters like this, there tends to be a concern about the
Yeah.
amount of looting that went
Yeah,
on.
that's
I don't think it
That's a
did.
perfect example. So they thought the first thing that the people in authority did was station people in front of the stores.
Yeah.
But they didn't have any real situation. And it turned out that the people who were stationed in front of the stores were kind of ne'er-do-well folks anyway, who were willing to stand out there. And they guarded the spot. The first reaction is not apparently, what can I get for myself?
Yeah.
The arrival of the sociologist was the thing that surprised me. And if I read it correctly, that was one of the first disasters that was really looked at from a sociological standpoint.
Study.
And almost started the science of the disaster,
I think you're right. Yeah.
And I guess that I had no idea. I guess I'd never really considered that it would be analyzed the way that it was. And so that was a pleasant surprise. The other thing was Jeannie's career afterwards, which when she went into politics, that I just thought that was wonderful. When I worked in Valdez after the spill, the deckhand grew up in Anchorage. And he'd be sitting there reading the Anchorage Daily News and get all wound up about something and say, I'm going to go up and call the governor. And the first couple of times he did it, I started chuckling. And then the cook says, no, he's known the governor since they were like 5 years old. He's going to go up and talk to the governor and ask him what the heck is going on. And that's the kind of small town connection that you have all throughout that state. And the state's huge,
And did you find that when you were up there? Did you know Jeannie?
I didn't know her when she was a state senator.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I worked in the governor's office while she was a state senator. So we worked on a few issues. Now, remember at that point in time, there was billions of dollars flowing in, oil revenue. So the whole state was changing. And rather than dealing with subsistence economy and, stuff like that, what do you do with billions of dollars of cash, hard cold cash coming in? And she was a major player in trying to figure out what do you do? I mean, there was, for example, the Native population, the increase in domestic violence and alcoholism was a serious problem. There's also I don't want to get into Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act and all those other things, but there was a huge amount of issue that related to billions of cash coming in that she was a part of, working with it. We're all working with it. It's really, really different than it was several years before the money came in.
And it's dramatically different now.
yes.
They've gone from boom to bust.
Yeah, I think it's gone down. The revenue is really gone
Alaska
down.
is being very nice to their alumni these days because they used to just get it all from oil money.
But then it was just unbelievable. And that's one of the reasons that Jeannie Chance lost when she ran. A lot of outside politicians came in
Because of the money.
because of
They're following the
money,
money.
and they started to dominate politics. And people like Jeannie and other people who've been there for a while, they just got overwhelmed and lost. She lost to a pretty corrupt senator. But anyway.
I was thinking about food because when I was in Anchorage, a lot of people had kind of like, I thought of them as almost like an anti-greenhouse because they were all built down. Because you get into the permafrost, it's 55 and it's
Sure.
easier to heat, right? And then sometimes even closed off and sometimes there was like those rabbits for heat, and chickens all growing together. And I was fascinated by that. But they were like, this is how if everything has to get shipped in, your growing season is amazing, but it's really short. So like making sure that there was food meant a lot of people turned to try to figure out how to grow their own.
Mhm.
And that's kind of what you're doing at Food Club, right? Veg Club.
Yeah,
So say, like, what would you say to people, like, get ready?
I would say if you have room for a pot on your deck, plant a tomato plant. If you've got more room, grow more, put in a bed to start growing whatever you can grow. And Veg Club, Kitsap, YouTube, Google that. It'll take you to previous classes and it'll help you learn how to grow. A lot of people, I think, are intimidated about the gardening process. And it's both easier than you think and harder than you think. And as Scott was saying about his entrance into the FCC test, I feel the same way about gardening. If I can grow something, anybody in this room could grow something. It's, yeah,
Well, the hardest thing, for people to get is that you have to pay attention.
you do.
And we're
Yeah,
so used to, it's like, honey, it's not furniture. It's like you don't buy a plant and put it there and then you're
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
It's like the plant is alive and it's like a pet. Think of it more like a pet.
right.
And so when people start thinking about growing the garden, it doesn't really occur until, again, you have to have a lived experience. Like, oh, what happened here? Nothing. Why? Well,
How I ignored it.
And it's also, you have to separate it from a chore. And I think as you garden more, you realize the physical, mental health, all of
Oh, yeah.
those benefits of just digging in the soil.
Yeah.
And if you have that kind of attitude at it, even if something doesn't grow, if you learn something from that experience, then it was still a success.
I certainly find kale, parsley, berries, a wonderful way to feel satisfied in my garden. I'm less satisfied sometimes with eggplant or pumpkins
Yeah.
Yeah.
or broccoli.
Yeah.
I mean, heat lovers are never going to be fooled. This is
Yeah.
not California.
Yeah.
This is not,
Right? But we can eat a lot of kale, right?
Yeah.
and a good thing too, right? Because Scotland, like if you look further north, people relied on potatoes and kale. Those are the things you can, from calories per square foot, potatoes and beans are where it's at, really.
And potatoes, I think, keep on giving. I keep finding them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Volunteers
Yeah.
forever.
Yep.
Well, there's a, beyond the physical health benefit of gardening, there's also the mental health, right? There's the science that proves you get soil underneath your fingernails and you get your hands in dirt, and that's actually now been known to be beneficial for your mental health.
There's a beneficial bacteria called something Vaccae, Vaccae, and it actually is a natural antidepressant that lasts up to 2 weeks. But you have to take your gloves off. It doesn't work on your glove. It works on your skin.
Oh, it'll work on my gloves.
You've been pulling blackberries.
have to open the gloves and shake them out every once in a while.
When Susan and I moved here, we were into ornamental gardening. No clue about food gardening at all. And then I think, so this was somewhere in 1999, I'm walking through the grocery store and there's this woman named Anne Lovejoy, this famous author, walking the other direction. I have every one of this woman's books at home. We have just moved here. And I went all fanboy. And I think I stuttered and
That's
I
hilarious.
called her Miss Lovejoy like 9 times within 30 seconds. But then I went home and talked with my wife Susan. That started us down the path of not just ornamentals, but growing food. And it was that conversation that really triggered, oh, let's go do food.
Well, because I started doing ornamentals too. And that's what a lot of people, flowers, right? It's pretty, it smells good. And then you start thinking about, food security, or maybe just the pleasure and joy of it, especially with children. Because I love like the big seed, big deed thing. You give a kid a couple of sunflower seeds and they grow something 10 feet tall. You've got to, somebody who's or pumpkins, or you do the Three Sisters and you have the corn and the beans and and you got the whole thing and it's huge. And the kids are like, I did that. That's a really big thing for them. And so it really kind of helps them connect to result, right?
Yeah.
And get interested in the way things grow. And then I started that from a bean and now look at that, right? So I think part of it is that hands-on early can really help kids get into it. But also the rewards are pretty great when you eat stuff that you grew, right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, there's no better feeling than just, and I don't want to push anybody towards smutness, but I really feel like, I don't know, there's just such a positive feeling I get from making a meal out of something we grew on our own house, on our own farm. We talked about the kids and getting them involved, and gardening, if you have a little bit of patience, you'll see results pretty. I'm a complete convert at this point, and that part of it is working with Carol.
Yeah.
And of course, Ann inspired me when we worked together at the library and just the beautiful grounds around our library here on the island. And my parents' garden, canned, all that stuff growing up. But back then, to me, it was more like a chore. And now, to me, it's more like a privilege.
Getting back to the book.
Yeah.
One of the things that was really interesting early on in Alaska and Anchorage was the medical support community, which was really challenging then. How are we now if something happens here?
Here or up there?
Here, right now, on Bainbridge, if there's a
So-
disaster, we're an island, and
We are an island and we don't have a hospital. What we are rich in, though, is medical license holders and folks who care. So we've built up a medical reserve corps, an MRC, that's now, it's our biggest team. It's like half the.
350 people.
Yeah,
Oh.
whoa, we're like at 7 something and it's half our volunteer crew.
now remember, that didn't exist
Right.
in Anchorage in the 60s at all.
But they
Didn't exist
did have
anywhere.
They had Providence and they had,
Presbyterian and Alaska Native Service. I worked at Providence Hospital.
you did.
Yes.
There's a mentality there, like my uncle did bush plane medicine. When he retired as being a normal general practitioner in Oklahoma, his retirement package was him and his wife flew to Alaska and they became bush pilot doctors, right? Just fly all these incredibly remote towns. And that type of mentality and some of the stories that Uncle David told me about that, it reminded me a lot of some of the stories that Chance is telling in this book, where you have this, we will make do with what we have, and we'll figure out how to take care of each other because that's all we have. There's not a big fully featured hospital, 10 minutes down the road.
Well, and during COVID, the Medical Reserve Corps that's when it grew to its size. And as I recall, there were a lot of people interested in improvising or developing. I know there were people working through Barn to try to
Yeah.
create ventilating.
Barn was one of the
Masks.
first partnerships on that, yeah, for the
And so,
PPE.
and so a similar kind of inventiveness
Mhm.
in a disaster.
There's a lot, I think people are attracted to Bainbridge Repairs that have can-do attitudes, that are do-it-yourself type mentality folks to say, okay, I see that we might have a big natural disaster, or we will at some point, and I want to be involved, and I have clever ideas. And we have just all of these folks bringing all of these clever ideas to bear.
And in this book, it may have been off the cuff, but there's a lot of stories of people organizing and thinking about better ways to do things. And where should we, how are we going to handle this? Where should Jeannie be to find out what's going on? What do we want to put over the radio? What don't we want to put over the radio? What do we want to put over the radio to make up for what we put over it last hour?
Yeah. Did it strike any of you also, remember the decade that we're in, and this journalist is female?
Right.
This isn't, they're not looking around for, okay, well, where's Tom Brokaw or
Right.
some white male to put on the radio. She just took charge. Did that strike it? That struck me as like, that is very unique skill set.
That's very Alaskan though,
Is
because
it?
if you live in the bush, you better be able to take care of yourself. I mean, I moved from Anchorage to the Yukon River and it was a whole new experience to be able to hook up a dog team. You don't stand on the back like Sergeant Preston and go mush. They take off like bats out of hell. And the first rule is hold on, don't let them go. Because if you lose your dog team and they get tangled up, you're SOL. And we also, we grew gardens, but
There's one sad aspect of this. Do you remember reading about the Fourth Avenue Theater?
yes,
It was just torn down.
Oh, just now, just recently.
About a year or so ago, it was torn down to put up a big commercial building. So it was a real unique place. I don't know if you remember it.
yes, I remember it. I was there when it was there.
It's gone.
Yeah, well,
And it was a
that
smaller place.
sounds like that was a smaller place.
Well, Anchorage was much smaller than it
Right.
is now.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, the description of the theater as this monumental and sort of out of place, out of context creation.
Ordinary, you know, so, you know, it's too bad that it no longer exists.
An iconoclastic thing that probably is also sort of Alaskan.
There were, I mean, Anchorage was typical Alaskan, not that the responses were that different, but all through the late sixties and seventies, when I lived there, if you saw somebody on the road walking, you'd probably stop and ask if they were okay. I walked to the University of Alaska, and it was about 2 miles each way. And as soon as it hit 40 below, people would stop their cars, insist that I get in and have a ride to campus. I mean, and if you went from Eagle to Fairbanks or Anchorage, you'd go to anybody you knew and they'd have you spend the night there. I mean, the money and the accommodations were pretty minuscule and people routinely helped everybody.
And that's how it was here for a long, long time. I mean, when we moved here in 85, there were still a lot of old timers and there was definitely this strong community bond that we were talking about earlier. And I remember being here in a big snow and somebody turned up and plowed the driveway and said, do you have wood? Do you have wood? You got water? And it's like, it was so, and they're just going up and down the road, right? It was like, that's what you did. And I think that's still in our DNA.
Oh, for sure, when we've had disasters, now it's got a name, Big Wheels. You have folks who are like, I've got a truck, I'm willing to go. Where do you need me to go? What do we need to do? We were doing a holiday meal a couple of years ago when it snowed and iced. I think on Christmas or right around there, we were going to have an in-person meal. And Tyler and the Big Wheels showed up and said, we'll get these food, you know.
Yeah,
We'll be reindeer.
yeah. That's a neat team. So Big Wheels, they tease me because it's my least favorite acronym. So Big Wheels stands for Bainbridge Island getting with lots of snow around, something like that. I don't like it so much, but it's Michael Ditmore and crew run that team and they do a great job. It's a really neat partnership between Bainbridge Repairs and like Senior Center and IVC. And when you have those winter storms, and just like the neighborhood show up unannounced and
What do you
wow,
need?
yeah,
right?
what do you need? It's a similar type of thing to say, if snow is going to keep you from getting to the pharmacy or the grocery, what do you need? We'll either take you or we'll go get the groceries for you and bring it back. And it's that social safety net that all of the sister organizations around our island, Senior Center and IVC and Helpline House and all of the others, and Bainbridge Prepares is one of those glue entities that says, well, the earthquake is going to affect all of them. So let's just get them networked together now. And we can do all kinds of neat things.
And the value of Map Your Neighborhood, the thing we were talking about before, the idea of putting your neighborhood together is that then you might know who
Yep.
is in your neighborhood who might need looking looking in on.
But one thing about that, so I moved into the mobile home park behind City Hall about 6 years ago and wanted to do the map your neighborhood. And they said, oh, we already did that in 2010. I was like, but it's like half different people now.
Yeah.
But that's okay. It's
Yeah.
like, well, no, it isn't because it's skill sets. It's like, who's got propane? It's all this stuff.
Yeah.
But it's so funny because if people feel like they've done it, but they don't want to do it again, you have to kind of go in there. and-
Yeah, I'll just
Yeah,
repeat.
like, where's your food? Where's
Exactly.
your water? Where's your
Yeah.
go bag?
It's an annual party. We want everybody to throw an annual preparedness party. Make it a 3-hour party and just talk about this for 30 minutes out of the 3 hours. But it's an annual thing that needs to be refreshed.
And
I can't-
it's come several times.
I've done it 3 times for your neighborhood.
And we still have holdouts, right?
Oh,
Yeah,
well, you will have holdouts.
I
Yeah.
know.
I mean, but the problem, that doesn't solve, that does get you 90% of the way to, oh, you want to check on
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Lucy, who didn't want to be a part of this, but Lucy's lives there.
Right.
Because you tried to talk to her and she wouldn't talk to you.
Everybody's got the one or two grumpy neighbors.
I had phone numbers. I was calling from Japan when I was there one winter to check on one of my neighbors because I knew his wife died and he was not in great shape.
Mhm.
When I couldn't get him, I had one of the other neighbors go knock on his door.
But that's what it takes.
That
It's
is
like the
what-
So
awareness.
we can't offer a 3-hour party here, but if, I mean, we do have them.
Too bad.
But if a group wants to have a organizing meeting and they don't have a place, the community center is happy to work with you to let you use Hunie Hall for an hour or two when we're not doing something else. So,
That's great.
yeah, because some people might feel like, I don't have a house big enough in this neighborhood to hold everybody.
Yeah, and we'll send a trainer to actually conduct that part of the party, that part of the
Well,
meeting.
we were talking about trying to put together an event where we could each make a go bag.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, easy peasy, 50 households,
Yeah.
no problem. But that's like, hey, it
Logistical.
takes space, but logistics are
Yeah.
a lot. But I still think that would be a great idea.
Yeah, I also think what you said earlier is, well, water and food
Right.
and making connections are probably more important than the utility knife and the
But it's the medications, it's the pet food, it's
Right.
the things you don't.
thinking about the idea of trying to order ahead your meds. Those kinds of things are worth thinking about.
You can just refill them a week early every
Right.
month and put the extra
working
ones.
it.
If your insurance company will let you do
There's a
that.
point at which,
Yes.
there's a point at which they will, in
As
most
long
cases.
as I don't do it more than 7 days in advance. I have enough pills to.
Okay, well, now we know.
Now we know. It's now official.
As well, when I move, I sound like a maraca.
So, any last comments?
Well, when you teed this up with the community, did you mention who John Moo is? That he's an
Yes.
Islander? He's a Bainbridge Prepares volunteer? Like, this is a local
And he's
hometown
wonderful.
hero. Yeah, John Moo is an amazing human being, who happens to also be a top-notch journalist, but I don't know if you teed that up.
Isn't he gonna be at the library next month or the month after?
I don't know.
Well,
Hard life.
I know, I looked at you automatically. I was like,
There's
I'm
a-
tired.
you have something there.
September 11th.
Okay.
I was discussing an evening with John Will Allen at
Oh, yeah. At Eagle Harbor.
At Eagle Harbor.
Oh, that would be
At the
fun.
bookstore.